do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Is that promise only for Joshua, or is it for us too? Yeah. And I think it's for us too, because the ground of it is not how strong we are, how courageous we are. The ground of it is Emmanuel. Yeah. God will be with us wherever we go.
You know, typically after taping of the Disciple Standard podcast, like an episode, I feel smarter, like just hanging out with wiser people. But this episode really inspired me, really just changed the way of how I perceive my own identity as a Christian, as a pastor. And it made me think about, okay, what's our identity as a church? These things matter because I see so many problems in even my own life, but I see in culture and people around me of purposelessness or meaninglessness or despair or what's happening with the culture or whatever. But at the end of this episode, I really left thinking like, wow, God is at work. God is with us. Let's go. I want you to watch through the end of this episode, because I think you'll really feel the same way. You'll understand, like I have, like I learned, like, okay, let's recenter and reorganize our thoughts into our paradigm of how we think about ourselves, our role as Christians, as pastors, and as the church. Buckle up. It's going to be a great episode. Welcome to the Disciple Standard Podcast.
The future is now.
Long time ago, an old monk nailed 95 theses to a door. Now we don't have an old monk, or we don't have 95 theses, but we do have Mr. Multiply here with 20 theses, because the state of the church was thinking through some things for the state of the church. There's a decline. There's something spiritual that's going on in the culture. We just want to recognize that kind of stuff. And certainly we are moved to see a spirit of revival, specifically in the Christian Reformed denomination. Glad that you're with us. And Mr. Multiply, glad that you're with us here today. You like that with the October thing?
All right, why not?
So you put together 20 theses. The link is in
upon a time in a land far, far away.
In Port St. Lucie, not in Germany, but here in Port St. Lucie. You had thought through this document. The link's in the description for anyone who wants to think through this. Also, it's on 2 Facebook groups that you had posted. But let me just start off with 2 questions here. What was the spirit behind putting together these 20 theses? What is a thesis? How do we even think through this? Like, if someone has like brand new to church culture, why did you write 20 statements about the CRC?
All right. Yeah, there's probably a lot of reasons why. This is what is coming to my mind as you asked me the question, because I think it's multifaceted. But I'll maybe start here. I think that one of my overall goals with this conference and just in general has to do with the way that we relate to each other denominationally. So I think anybody who has a friendship with somebody else or relationship with somebody else, it's very rarely just about the relationship itself. It's almost always about something else. So I'm a tennis player, so I have friends that are my tennis friends. And our friendship is mostly about tennis. That's what draws us together. It's what we have in common. I have pickleball friends, and what draws us together is that we play pickleball with each other. And there may be all kinds of different reasons why you have friendships with people, and they're generally about not just each other, but this other thing. And what I was thinking to myself is that it's not just enough to have people show up in the same place, and now what? It has to be about something. And so I was thinking that there has to be kind of like a shared philosophy or a shared vision for our future together. This is the reason that we're going to relate together. This is what we're going to be excited about. Here's how we're going to get on the same page with each other. And I thought it's good to just kind of spell out where we think we are, where we think we're going, what are going to be the values that are going to push us into the future. And that way we can interact about something. So my thought was, okay, let me just try to spell out and share with people broadly what I'm thinking. People can react to it. We can sharpen it. We can hone it. We can change it. But that way, definitely we're getting on the same page with each other, and our relationships, which I think are so needed, are about something.
Yeah. So let me maybe zoom it out. You're saying, I think what I'm saying is something is broken in our culture. Something's very wrong spiritually, where there's chaos, there's anxiety, there's depression, there's all kinds of stuff. And the way God works through the world is in his church. The church is declining. The church, as far as numbers go, at least, the church is in a state, especially in the CRC, where we are tracking a trajectory of decline here, extreme decline. Actually, it's more steeper than what we thought it was, and it's getting steeper. So there's less hope. There's less of the gospel being shared. There's less people finding transformed lives, because of Jesus Christ. And so you've put together you're calling people a coalition of the willing, at least a conference, to come together based on.
Yeah, and it's at least, I guess I would say this is at least my thoughts as I started writing this out. Now, Tim Sheridan, who's head of church planting, was here. We worked on these together. Vivi Cassis, who also works in church planting for a denomination, she was here. We worked on these together a little bit. My thought is, hey, if we can come around to philosophy like this, these will be like our guiding thoughts or guiding philosophy or guiding principles to help us, hopefully, move from what is our current reality, which includes a lot of decline, to a better reality, which is hopefully, we start advancing, we start making gains, we start seeing God's Spirit at work, multiplying disciples, multiplying leaders, multiplying churches.
And these aren't just philosophies or guiding principles for a church is like group of people. These could be individual guiding philosophies as well. I see these are split up into 5 different categories.
Yeah, that's good.
Identity, discipleship, leadership, planting, and hope. Why those 5? Why 5? What was your thought in splitting them up into categories?
Yeah, and I think there's probably some art to my thought, but it's not only linear. I almost think it's sort of circular. They all work together.
So hope will then lead into more
that's
identity.
Right. So, yeah, having hope is part of your identity. That kind of thing.
Do you think there's not a lot of hope in people's identity right now?
Well, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, as a denomination, kind of our identity right now is probably that we're experiencing a lot of decline, and maybe there will be some people who think, well, we're just going to keep on declining, and 20 years from now, we'll wrap it up. And at least for me, I don't think that's our default future. I actually don't think we're in an age of decline. Like, it's not inevitable. That's actually one of my theses in here at some point, which is I think we're in an unprecedented age of gospel opportunity. Yeah. And our denomination could be 3 times as large 20 years from now.
Right. Okay, I want to go through these theses, and I'm not sure how many we'll get to, but this is probably one for if you're watching or listening to this podcast. Type down your thoughts on any one of these theses. You just heard Mr. Multiply say himself. He wants to sharpen them and hone them, especially if you're coming to the conference. The link in the to register is down in the description or in the comments section below. And come and talk it out with us. I think it'd be good, and you have something to contribute.
Not only that, but there's only 20 right now. So in the spirit of the Protestant Reformation, there's 75 open spots.
Yeah, we're missing a few. So maybe we could add. That's a lot of theses, though. I don't know how they handle that. But we're certainly just going to go through, and this is kind of to get the ball rolling. Number 1 in the first category of identity. The Church of Jesus Christ is most faithful to its identity when it's making disciples. Without disciple making, it will wither, but with multiplication, it will thrive. What's lost when churches prioritize programs or anything else besides discipleship? Why'd you put that?
Okay, actually, there's a lot of thought that is here in this first thesis, and I think I'd like to just share my thinking.
Yeah.
And here's what it is. First of all, in the Reformed tradition, we have what are called the 3 marks of the true church. This comes from the Belgic Confession, and they include faithful preaching and teaching of the gospel, the administration of the sacraments, and the exercise of discipline.
Yep.
Okay, so those are the 3 marks of the true church. And that's great. But part of my thinking is, all right, but from a biblical thought about the church, we know that Jesus commissioned his church. He said, go and make disciples. So I think, even though in the Belgian Confession, the Great Commission and the making of disciples was not one of the marks of the true church per se, I think that any ecclesiology that ignores the fact that the church has been commissioned to do something is like a deficient ecclesiology. By the way, ecclesiology is
that's a big
the
college
subject
word.
matter in theology which tries to understand and describe the church.
Got it.
Okay? So I just think that, any thought about the church that doesn't understand that we've been commissioned to go and make disciples really just stops understanding something that is vital about the church. I didn't want to get into any kind of discussion about whether this is one of the marks of the church or it isn't. There's a huge debate that is going on in the theological world in the area of ecclesiology about whether the church is a mission or the church has a mission. And those are interesting conversations, and it was not my intention to try to interact with that conversation totally here. Someone will just have to sit back and think about this, and if you want to do some reading, there's plenty of books out there to read about this. Does the church have a mission, or is the church a mission?
Okay.
So that's a good question. My simple point here is that the Church of Jesus Christ is most faithful to its identity, because Jesus has given the Great Commission, when it's doing the Great Commission, when it's out making disciples.
This that was loaded. All right, you're putting a wrinkle.
I am. I'm telling you, there was a lot of thought that went into this first thesis.
You're putting a wrinkle in my smooth brain right now.
Well, I didn't want to wade into, and it's not necessary, in my opinion, to get into a big theological and ecclesiological debate. Like, there might be Reformed Christians who think differently about this, and that's fine. You may think the church has a mission. You may think the church is a mission. Either way, you're welcome here.
Okay.
And here's what we're going to agree on. The church is most faithful to its identity when it is engaged in the Great Commission. The key of the Great Commission is go and make disciples.
Right.
And actually, the main verb is make disciples. Really, you could translate that verse as you go, make disciples.
Gotcha.
Because the verb is make disciples, and the going is a participle which attends to that main verb. So
I think the discipleship revolves around the gospel, which brings us to our second thesis.
Okay, very good.
Every true renewal begins not with strategies, but with a fresh encounter with the gospel of Jesus Christ. What's your thought process behind here?
This is a key. I think actually here, if we gather together as a conference and we get some strategies together and we have some new techniques, then I guess that's fine. But I don't really think there's going to be a renewal or revival that really breaks out. I think what really causes renewal and revival is when there is a fresh encounter with the good news and you're like, wow, what Jesus has done for me is so awesome. What Jesus is doing in the world is so awesome.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that I've been saved. I have the opportunity to be a part of that. And what ends up happening is that I think understanding in an even deeper way, a more radical way, what the gospel of Jesus Christ is all about, changes us at the heart level, and then propels us forward in ways that no mechanical strategy or techniques could.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just a matter of the heart. It's a matter of who we are. And it's long been my conviction that one of the strengths of the Christian Reformed Church is that we are committed to being gospel-centered. And I think, in a way, if you sort of talk about renewal, it's like gathering up and saying, okay, this really is the heart or strength of who we are and what we're all about. And let's not try to like change the core of who we are. Like, oh, let's set the gospel aside and just pick up these techniques. No, the gospel's the core. We're going to live into our identity in fresh and new ways, in uncompromising ways. I think the Christian Reformed Church is so well positioned to address the needs of the modern world, the rise of secularism. We don't have to change the core of our identity, and this is in the area of identity. We actually need to live into it even more.
Yeah.
We're about the gospel.
I think when an individual wants to see either a church of people, like a revival in their church, or just someone across the street just to find Jesus Christ, it's not about how you structure your arguments or some kind of strategy or program. It's just like you need them gripped by the gospel and repeated in their life over and over, which is number 3. The decline of the CRCNA, or denomination, is not inevitable. For the God who raises the dead is able to renew his church. I thought that was really good. The reformed articulation of the gospel we hold is not outdated but robust, beautiful, and needed for such a time as this. Some say the church, or even the CRC, is too old, too complex, too far gone. What gives you hope that God could still bring this kind of revival?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's Jesus' church, not ours. And he's the one who's doing it, not us.
Okay, punto right there. Yeah.
So I think any fair reading of who Jesus is, what Scripture tells us, God's going to do his work. He's going to advance his church. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. And no matter who you are, what time you live in, I think you got to be filled with, I guess this is hope, but it's also our identity. Man, we've already overcome the world. We've been saved. Jesus has conquered. The victory's already in hand. I think, I wish I could remember. I was actually listening to an audiobook. It was someone from like the late 1700s, early 1800s, who started to describe, and it was somewhere in Europe, but they were describing that it was like they were starting to feel like the tide was starting to shift and go out for the first time. Like their imagery was like the tide had come all the way in, and now in their day, they just felt in sort of like Western civilization, the tide starting to recede a little bit. And I could just say that I think almost everybody who's living today, I mean, the numbers, the statistics bear this out. If you're living in North America, from somewhere in the mid-90s, right around the year 2000, that tide started to like go out in a very strong way. And almost everybody who's in a church or who's been in ministry, they feel the weight of that tide. You might be a very strong swimmer and you're swimming for shore, but the tide is actually stronger. And so I think there's a lot of pastors, a lot of churches, they're actually trying to work harder, they're doing more, they feel themselves striving, and yet the church is in decline. Anyway, I don't think just because, if you look at the tides, they go in and out a couple times a day, and just because the tide went out a little bit doesn't mean the tide's not going to come back in.
Right.
And I think God's in charge. And actually, I don't know. It could just be my own sense of the moment or my own sense of where history stands. But it seems to me that in our North American context, already we're starting to sense that, like, okay, the whole project of secularism is like failing people. People are not satisfied with it. It doesn't provide any real answers. It's causing people's lives to just, hit the rocks, and people are feeling devastated and hurt and angry and worried and anxious. And all of a sudden, I think people are asking spiritual questions. And It strikes me, maybe the tide has gone all the way out, and we could be on the cusp of this whole new wave.
Yeah.
And I don't see any reason why we would just not think like, okay, amen, God's in charge. He sharpened us up. We became much better swimmers as the tide was going out. Now we're going to run like the wind. And you don't even have to be that good a swimmer if the tide's like carrying you in. You're just like, whoa, I'm flying.
Yeah.
And that could happen to us.
Yeah.
And that's what I think.
I feel like a sense of exhaustion or burnout, meaninglessness and purposelessness within like culture. I sense that within our church or even just like on social media, what I see. It's just that sense. Why is it so important to correct our identity on different levels? I'm going to say the denominational level, the local church level, as a pastor or as a Christian. You could take them all. It could be all the same. I'm not sure if it's all the same, but like, let's start with the denominational level. Why is it so important to correct our identity? And what would that identity be? If you could sum it up, would it be something like hopeful or gospel-centered? Like, boil it down to a point for me for a denomination. Why is it important to correct the identity? And what would that be?
I think, this is a gospel identity that understands all of what I've just been saying right now, that Jesus has been victorious, that we've been saved, we've been included in the church, that God's in control, all these kinds of things that come along with the gospel. And I think actually like what's coming to my mind right now is Psalm 146. You know, praise the Lord, sing hallelujah. And there's a line that says, do not put your trust in princes and human beings who cannot save. They shall die and return to the dust, and all their thoughts and plans shall end. It's so easy to put your trust in politics or people or whatever. But I think what's going on in our culture right now is those who thought, oh man, you know, we're on the cutting edge of a political revolution where everything is going to be so much better, are like disillusioned.
Right.
Oh, wait a second. We might actually be worse off.
Yeah.
Or we might have thought to ourselves, oh, there's this American dream where we're going to get wealthier and wealthier, and pretty soon all our problems will go away. Wait a second. That seems to be failing us. The next generation is like, I probably am not going to be in the same economic position as my grandparents. And actually, we have more now, but we're more miserable too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like those who put their trust in these other things, like it's just being revealed in culture that the whole plan of our secular world is failed. And then people hear, oh, that's never where I should have had my trust anyway.
Right.
There's like a void of meaning. It's very difficult to get meaning if there's no God.
Yeah.
And you're going to go around the sun 70 times, and then you're going to get buried in the ground, and you're just going to return to dust. So what? Why do I strive? Why do I have a dream? If there's no God, it's nothingness. And people are starting to realize, like, the only way to get real meaning in my life is to turn my life over to Jesus Christ. And immediately as I do that, and I think it's just becoming more obvious in culture that the secular project is coming to an end.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not like it's over, but maybe the tide has shifted.
Yeah. I think one of the traits of the secular project, as you say, is that leaves the individual to ascribe meaning to things in their life. Like I have to place meaning into the things I'm doing or whatever, what I'm achieving. Whereas, in Christianity, meaning is ascribed to us from outside. So it's It's untouchable. It's higher. It's bigger than ourselves.
And just imagine now, like you say to yourself, like, okay, I don't know, you're a young person, you play soccer. Okay, soccer is what gives me meaning.
Yeah.
But then one day you're playing soccer, you blow out your knee. Oh, I have no meaning.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a Christian, you get this meaning from the outside. You totally realize that, man, my life is chock full of meaning, whether I play soccer or not. Soccer is an add-on. Oh, if I can play it, awesome. But if I can't, I'm not devastated. My life's not over.
Right.
And that happens with jobs. It happens with relationships. And people will put all their meaning into a relationship, and it comes to an end. Or people will put all their meaning in a career, and it comes to an end. And for the Christian, man, If we have the career, if we have the relationship, if we have the part in the play, if we have the spot on the team, like all that's great. But if it goes away, I'm golden. I'm still fine.
Yeah. It's I was talking about the identity of like an institution, denomination. You mentioned victors. That's part of our identity. We're victorious in Christ. We're saved. We know that God's in control and we trust in God. Those seem like things that from a denominational level to a church level to a pastor to a Christian, all of us can ascribe to and should ascribe to.
Yeah, maybe in one of the most important categories, it just struck me, we're loved.
Yeah.
Man, I think the average person, that's what really drives their life, to search for love, to be loved. And when you have a gospel identity, you realize, wow, my cup is full and overflowing. Like I have been loved to the uttermost. And, if you're just trying to seek a relationship with someone and you're hoping they'll fill your cup and they're hoping you'll fill their cup and you want them to fill your cup, but you're both empty.
Yeah.
Nothing can happen. But if already your cup has been filled and overflowing from Jesus, then now you actually have something to give and they have something to give. Man, all your relationships become very meaningful.
Yeah.
The amount of love you have in your life it's amazing. So
it's full, it's mission oriented,
Yeah.
it's full of meaning, as you said, which takes us to probably some of the core of this, as you labeled here, disciple multiplication as the core for mission, as the core for identity, as the core for all that. So number 4, the decline in membership is first a decline in discipleship. Pause there. Reversing the trend requires multiplying disciples, not just preserving institutions. There's a couple of phrases that stand out to me.
Okay.
Not just preserving institutions, and a decline in membership is a decline in discipleship first.
First, yeah. So I think, sometimes people talk about leading and lagging indicators.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this probably fits into that. If it turns out that we stop doing discipleship, maybe our membership will just sort of stay the same for a while. But pretty soon, because we've abandoned this discipleship process, the membership numbers start to decline, okay? And it might be that those membership numbers are declining, but if you start now, in the midst of that decline, putting your effort back into multiplying disciples, then pretty soon, as a lagging indicator, you're going to see your membership numbers go up. Why is that? Well, when you make a disciple, what you're doing is you're helping a person become a fully formed, mature, reproducing Christian. And there's an excitement about that. There's a gospel identity that happens. And then that person starts making disciples, and the disciples they make starts making disciples. And it might be that you have a lot of people who are in church right now who really don't understand Christianity, who have no sense of, the excitement or the deep heart that comes from the gospel. But they've been there and they're going out of tradition and they like the institution of it or whatever. My grandma always went to church, so I guess I should always go to church. But they've never themselves fully been discipled. They don't know how to make disciples. Then what ends up happening is, and this is what's been happening over the last 30 years, people are just quietly filtering away from church.
Would this be your definition of discipleship then? A fully formed, reproducing Christian?
Fully formed, mature, reproducing disciple of Jesus. And I think discipleship is really that you've committed to learning the Jesus way. You've committed yourself to learning. Disciple's a learner. The Great Commission tells us to go make disciples, and one of the key activities is teaching. So as you make disciples, you're teaching. As you become a disciple, you're learning. And your key teacher, even if you have someone who's discipling you, is not that mentor. That mentor is really connecting you to Jesus, and you're learning from Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's how I think about discipleship. And I think when I use those phrases, fully formed, mature, reproducing disciples, those are adjectives that describe the kind of disciples I think we want to produce. We want them to be fully formed. We want them to know the gospel inside and out. I think right now there's a lot of people and they maybe attend church, but if you walked up to them and said, hey, what's Christianity all about? They might fumble around for an answer, maybe even, if we got at it, they may say things, well, I'm really trying to please God and I hope that my good works might be enough, or, they might fumble around at something that's not the heart of Christianity. Fully formed is a person who, man, at 3 a.m, you shake them awake out of their bed and you're like, what's Christianity about? And they just, okay, they know it. At some point I came to realize that God had a problem with me because I don't live up to his perfect standard. And, I came to realize that God is righteous and just. And so he must punish my sin. The punishment's death and good works won't work. But here's the good news. God sent a substitute, someone to take my place. Jesus was the perfect substitute. And on the cross, God took all my sin and put it on Jesus. And I want people, they're in an elevator and someone says, what's Christianity? And they're like, boom, they're giving the most sharp answer. And I want them to not just have a surface level answer, but then I want them to be able to dig down underneath. They understand the Bible. They have a great sense of doctrine and the history of the church and their place in it. And they're committed to mission. And I guess that's all the kinds of things I mean by fully formed. Mature. Yeah. That one is a little more difficult to describe. I think there is such a thing as a baby Christian, and there is such a thing as a mature Christian. And I want people to become mature in their faith, which includes things like wisdom, character, all these kinds of things that
values, goals.
Right, the person. Mm-hmm. And now I think this is the key, reproducing. There's a little phrase we use around here, disciples make disciples. And it's interesting. You read through the Gospels, Jesus chose disciples. They were ordinary, unschooled people, fishermen. They had no formal religious training per se. They spent time learning from Jesus. And then what ended up happening is those disciples, Jesus said, okay, now go make disciples. And I really think that any good reading of Scripture will help you realize that God intends for us to reproduce. If we've become a disciple, God now wants us to become a disciple maker. If you're a disciple, you're a learner, you've got to be able to teach, teaching to obey everything I've commanded you, Jesus says. So I think it's just this natural way that learners become teachers, disciples become disciple makers. And I think healthy things reproduce. If you're a mature, healthy Christian, one of the signs of that is that you're going to reproduce. So for too long, this whole idea of disciple making has been left to just a few people to do.
Pastors?
It's for the pastors, it's for the professionals, whatever. The average Christian has not realized there's an expectation that if they're a disciple of Jesus, they'll become a disciple maker. And I think that's the real key. We are now, as we think about disciple making, we're going to make it very, very clear that, this is a theme of the Reformation as well, the priesthood of all believers. But we're going to make it really clear, every believer a multiplier. We've got a vision for the church that is, I love this, the CRC. It's going to be the denomination where the gospel's preached thoroughly, in and out, every week, at every event, in every aspect of our ministry. And we're going to be known as the denomination that is carrying out the Great Commission from top to bottom, not just as a strategy or some kind of program, but like every believer a multiplier. We are going to teach believers to take up their role as fully formed, mature, reproducing Christians who know the gospel, who can teach others. And I think it's actually that decentralized, distributed character that really gets me going. It's not just for paid professionals. There's a vision in Scripture that every single believer of Jesus is going to, as they learn from Jesus, as they grow as a disciple, they're going to be commissioned by Jesus to become a disciple maker and a disciple multiplier. And What if we could be the denomination that is gospel-centered through and through, and everybody knew it, and is carrying out the Great Commission in just the most amazing ways? To me, that's very compelling.
Which is what's true to our identity already, as you stated. Like, there's already a robust, beautiful articulation of the gospel that we already hold to.
That's
this
right.
is something we already are. And so this is inspiring to return back to those roots of gospel-centered identity, which was then carried out in discipleship, which brings us to number 5. Discipleship, which includes both outreach and nurture, is not an optional program of the church, but the very essence of Christian life. Every believer a multiplier. That phrase really is compelling. How does that play into everything? How are you thinking through all this?
In some ways, this could be it could be perceived to be like a new vision for our denomination. We might say, oh, this has not been the case. Maybe, but I think it's actually at the roots of our denomination as well. It's core to our identity. But there is going to have to be a retooling. There's going to have to be a new clarity. I'm hoping that that's one of the things. Why I'm writing these theses is like, let's get some clarity about a few things.
Yeah.
I think this simple phrase, every believer a multiplier. Let's get some clarity that is what we want in our churches. You attend a church, no matter where it is, in the United States, Canada, North America, wherever it is, you walk into a Christian Reformed church, and it would just be awesome if you knew that as you looked at the congregation, everybody there who's been there for any reasonable amount of time is like fully capable of taking a brand new Christian and helping them grow in Christ from beginning to end.
Okay. So
let's say you've been in a church for 3 years. Okay, you are fully qualified and capable. You've been given the tools. You've been mentored yourself. And now you're able to turn around. And anyone who walks through the doors these days who doesn't know anything about Jesus, in some relatively short period of time, you can take this person who knows nothing, help them become a fully mature, reproducing, gospel-centered Christian who they themselves, a couple years later, will be like fully capable of taking somebody else.
So you're saying every Christian in the church should be responsible, should feel the weight of this responsibility of the Great Commission, make disciples. Everyone's a multiplier. I have some objections.
Hit me.
What if I'm too old?
No. You probably have more capability than almost anybody. You have so much wisdom. You've lived the Christian life for so long. People are looking to you because you could help provide perspective to life. You could, I don't think that's an objection at all.
I think that's a strength.
Of course it's a strength.
Yeah, I think so too. Actually, this has been something I've been thinking about lately is...
and in general, you have more time to do it.
I feel like 60 to 80-year-olds are at their peak of their life.
Absolutely.
That's how I feel. It's like at 60 to 80, you have like the most money you ever had, probably some spare time on your hands because like the kids are all, wisdom, and you're the smartest you've ever been.
Yeah.
After 80, I don't know. I haven't been there. I need to think that through. My Lola just, passed at 99. So we got to, but she was still doing it. She was still planting churches at 95, 96, 97. And
our culture, for whatever reason, it's our culture, our secular culture,
American
tends
culture,
to lionize youth and relegate seniors. Come on, our culture is all wrong.
Yeah.
Let's give up on this.
Yeah, that's...
Of course, the most capable people are those who are wiser, older, better resourced, have had more life experiences. So it's not an age thing.
Yeah, well, okay, what if I'm too young? I don't know anything. I'm only 22, 21.
Oh, man, now's the time.
Yeah.
One of the great things about youth is passion.
Mm-hmm.
Youth are known for their passion. That's what we need. We need passionate people out there doing it. Let's go.
I'm too busy. I have a 9-to-5 job. I got 3 kids at home. I'm too busy.
Yeah, that's happening to a lot of people in our culture right now. We're just sort of like overscheduled. All I'd say is this. Just look on your phone, figure out how much time you're spending on social media.
Ooh,
Carve out some of that time for disciple making.
So you're talking about
It's
prioritization.
just prioritization.
Yeah.
I think we get busy, and there's no doubt. I mean, I've got kids too, and I've got a busy job, and I think it's just a matter of prioritization. And I think if we really see in this world what is important, this goes back to the gospel identity. Oh, wow. There's nothing more important than that.
Yeah.
Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me, which means, in a way, you turn your back on almost every other thing. My relationship with Jesus is the most important thing.
It's just an interesting thought experiment to say, if you were to list the top 50 things that you do in your life, and you could ask just any given pastor or even Christian, would discipleship make the top 50, top 10? You know, like, where would it land on there? And it's just probably a good way to take stock about where do you prioritize.
So here's the thing, and I could just imagine there'll be people who are listening to this, and they may say to themselves, yeah, that's right. Every believer a multiplier. Probably every believer should be able or capable of discipling people. But the bottom line is my church has not equipped me, and if you told me go make a disciple, I wouldn't know what to do. Maybe my pastor knows what to do. Actually, there are pastors who are listening, and they'll feel exactly the same way. They've just we haven't given the right tools to churches. So to a certain extent, this is a Disciple Standard podcast. It's probably what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
And I think there's any number of great tools that are out there. We're promoting the one that we use, which is 222 Disciple. And I just think, look, if you're saying to yourself, I hear you, I'd love to do that, but I just don't know how. I'm just telling you that there are tools out there that will train you. And in many ways, they're simple.
Yeah.
Simple tools. And 222 Disciple is one of them. So if people want to connect with us, why don't we put a link at the bottom of this video as well? You could be going within the next, week or so, short amount of time, being trained to do this. And that's our vision. I think we are returning to a disciple standard.
Yeah. Certainly, I don't think having unskilled disciple makers is what we want to aim for. Of course, we want skilled disciple makers, but quite honestly, as I found, like, I'm not a good disciple maker. I'm like, all it is obedience. Like, there are people who have been affected where it's just my involvement in their life and showing them and walking with them through and thinking through these theological concepts. And then I've got some skills along the way. But yeah, it's really not a skills issue. It's a priority issue.
No, but I do think there are people out there who they may want to, but they just say,
they don't feel confident.
I don't feel confident. No one has trained me in this.
Gotcha.
And I do think, as we grab hold of these principles, we're going to have to be committed, and these are action steps, to helping retool the church maybe.
Yeah, and which leads us to number 6. We're only in 6. If we aim at discipleship, we get the church thrown in. If we aim at preserving the church, we lose both. This is shades of Tim Keller. But tell us what you were thinking through here.
I think sometimes when we think about the church declining, our impulse is like, how do we just save this institution? How do we keep our church open for the next 5 years? And it becomes really about preserving an institution, and now you've lost track of what it is that fuels this institution and what helps it, get its energy. And I think if you aim at discipleship, it's just amazing. You start discipling people who disciple people who disciple people, and before you know it, like, the church just starts.
You got a church. Yeah.
So again, this goes back to, like, it's not as though the church is declining and there's, like, some surefire strategy or, I don't know, okay, what program can we do? Oh, here's your program. No, it's about getting back to our core identity. We love the gospel, and we're going to pass that on. We're going to point people to Jesus. His power is going to be at work in people's lives. His Spirit's going to be fueling them. We're going to train people about how to pass that faith forward. both in terms of outreach and nurture, help fully formed, mature reproducing Christians be gathered together to get a dynamic going where, honestly, all of a sudden the church gains this whole energy. And now we don't have to think about like, oh, what's our, silver bullet to maintain this institution? The institution just becomes alive.
Yeah. I think discipleship then leads into what is this next category, leadership development. Now I'm looking at the time, look at the length of this podcast. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take probably 2 from these sections.
No problem.
And I'm going to leave the rest up if you're curious about the rest of these theses, go ahead and just check out the link once more. But number 7 and number 9 were interesting to me. Number 7, the future of our denomination depends on multiplying leaders faster than we multiply churches. This seems like almost like a math problem to me, or something of that. Like, how are you thinking about multiplying leaders needs to be faster than multiplying churches? What's going on?
Well, there's a lot here. So I'll slow down a little bit, even though you're trying to speed us up.
That's fine.
One thing is our denomination right now has a severe deficit of leaders. So I'm not going to know all the statistics just off the top of my head, but there are some things that I do know about, which is, and I'll give some examples of just this year. So if you think about pastoral leadership, there's like 25% of our churches in our denomination that don't have a pastor, and most of them now have no hope of getting a pastor because there just aren't enough to go around.
Wow.
Trained pastors to go around. So we have this huge deficit. Now, if we take this last year's synod, so every year we lose a certain number of leaders, and then we have, through retirement or people leave. So I don't have the exact number. So these are like ballparks, but there was something like 150, 160 pastors who retired or left the denomination or ran into some issue that caused them to need a separation. So sort of those who are going out was like 150, 160 people, okay? We had 18 candidates come in.
Oh, boy.
You've since the math?
Oh, yeah.
Now, this was probably a low watermark, and this was pointed out at Synod that's probably because those candidates, and they would have completed seminary training. They would have started their seminary training sort of during the COVID years. And so it might be a low watermark, but nevertheless, there's a whole bunch of reasons why I think people are, we're getting this lack. Part of it is, man, the church has been all this decline. Do I really want to give my life to leading a church that might just close?
Yeah.
And I think, when it comes to multiplying leaders, there's a lot that could be said here. But, right now we're just talking about your math equation. If we said to ourselves, let's go plant 1,000 churches.
Right. Do we have 1,000 leaders?
Yeah, we're going to need all kinds of leaders
Minimum.
to do that, right? And not everyone that's going to become a leader is going to become a church planter.
Right.
So when it comes to multiplying churches, we're going to have to be like, if you want to plant 5 churches, we might have to raise up 20 leaders.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's why we have to get about the business of multiplying leaders. Now, we're not getting into the action steps today, but I think this is great to talk about, which is we have this sort of growing vision. I don't know if the number is right or wrong, but that in the next decade, we're all going to work together at raising up 2,000 leaders, which is to a church for the next decade. So in one way, it's very doable, but it will be, if you think about the 18 a year, that's we're going to have to move to 200 a year.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to grow as we go. But now this is what we've noticed in disciple making. What ends up happening as you really concentrate on disciple making is you have all kinds of people who, as they start to make disciples, they say to themselves, wow, I really feel like the Holy Spirit is like giving me an ability here or a gift here, and I'd like to pursue more.
Yeah.
And I think what's exciting is then we help identify, like, you know what, God has given you gifts, and you do have an ability. And could you imagine become a leader in this movement that, by the way, could be very exciting? In fact, it's like one of the most important thing. It's the greatest thing that, like, there are lost people and we're a church that's out there, making a difference for eternity.
Yeah.
And so we're encouraging people like, you know what? Give your life to leadership in the church.
Yeah.
You will not be let down by that. It will not go wrong. It's going to be the most satisfying thing. It's not going to be easy. There could be all kinds of challenges, but that's what's going to make it so satisfying and so wonderful. And you know what? If you're sensing God perhaps calling you, you will not go wrong by diving in with both feet.
Yeah, it kind of like plagues you, honestly. It's like, I feel like I need to do something.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to go more. That's what happened to me. I'm like, I can't. I mean, I fought it. I fought the call.
Well, it's so interesting because Jonah is such a small book in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's so profound because there's so many people who, when they hear God calling them, have a Jonah experience. You know what? I'm going to run exactly the opposite way and as far away as I can get.
Yeah.
And I think in some way or another, just this is the way it works, there has to be someone who comes alongside of you and says, you know what? I think you have it. I think God is calling you. I could see it. And to some certain extent, I think we actually need this sort of outside influence. And so current leaders need to be attuned to who could become future leaders who might have those gifts. We need to pour into them. As we see them becoming successful in the Great Commission, we need to encourage them. And then, you know what? It's all God's work anyway. He's the one that calls people into ministry leadership. So...
yeah, that's my story, right? Like, you looked at me and you said, hey, I think you should be, you could be a pastor. I said, Joe, nah, man, no way. But that's what leads us to point 9 right here.
Yep.
Leadership pipelines must begin in the local church, not with denominational agencies, offices, or initiatives. Seminaries can sharpen, but congregations must send. And so this pipeline, as you said, like you just said, the current leaders need to have eyes to look out and see who they can identify that maybe there's a calling on their life. And then they're going to be prepared for this answer. Nah, no boy, no man, no sir. Because it's scary, right? I think that's the natural reaction. Honestly, I just think that's natural. It's not anything special that says that. But talk to me about why you include that. And then even the last part, congregations must send.
Yeah, so I think this actually gets to the core of this conference, in my opinion, which is at the highest levels denominationally, we recognize, oh man, we have a leadership deficit. We have all kinds of churches. We don't have enough pastors. We're not bringing in enough leaders to replace the outgoing ones. You can realize that at the highest level, but now what? I mean, from the highest levels of the denomination, if someone says, all right, we need more leaders, what can actually be done? So I believe what's necessary is that we recognize this at the highest level, but the energy for this has to come from the local level.
Gotcha.
No one could say we need 2,000 leaders and just wave a wand and next thing that happens. And no church, by themselves could do this either. So we need a partnership at the local level where everyone's encouraging each other. And I think the idea of this conference is, hey, this is a gathering of ministry practitioners and leaders from all around the denomination who are going to come together, and we've got to get some core priorities. And one of those core priorities is we are going to sharpen each other and we're going to work together, and we're going to have this bold goal of, a decade from now, we'll have the opposite problem. Oh man, there's just too many people committed to gospel leadership and there's not enough churches.
Yeah. Oh, we have a problem about, putting leaders in place. We got so many leaders.
That's a good
problem.
This is a goal to get a different problem.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, it leads up, right? Multiply disciples to multiply leaders to multiply churches. If we're going to want, let's say 2,000 leaders, you probably need something around 20,000 disciples or whatever it is, a 10-to-1 ratio. And then out of the 2,000 leaders, maybe you get, I don't know, 200 churches or whatever, however much. This leads us into the second category. If you want to see the other ones in leadership development, links in the description again. But this fourth category, church planting is not one option among many. It is the ordinary means by which the Spirit renews and expands the church. Now, this one was interesting because you posted this on Facebook, and a gentleman named Benjamin commented on it. I want to bring up the comment.
Yeah,
for
great.
you. He says, where does this thesis come from, and why the emphasis on planting as the ordinary means of expanding the church rather than, say, the growth or renewal of existing communities?
Yeah, I've seen this comment, and I'm formulating a response. So now this will be my way of sort of talking it out.
Okay.
And maybe I'll get sharp enough to actually finally write something.
Got it.
So first of all, I don't believe that the two options are mutually exclusive. So, of course, we should be working to renew existing churches. And that also can be a very excellent priority. There's no reason why we have to choose one or the other. So I don't want to set up kind of like a false dichotomy, which is like, well, we can put our efforts into planting churches or we can put our efforts into renewing churches, and we can only do one or the other. I don't see that as...
Got to be both.
Yeah. So I guess that's one part of the response. Now, the second part, he asked, where does this thesis come from? And I guess I'm open to discussion about this, but I think any fair reading of the New Testament will show that the activity of the early church in response to what Jesus has done, empowered by the Spirit, was to get out and plant churches. So I think it's just like from the Great Commission itself, which eventually comes around not only to teaching, but baptizing. Well, we need churches in order that baptisms would take place. So I think the very act of church planting is sort of built in to even the Great Commission itself. But now if you just read through the book of Acts, it becomes obvious that the Spirit was compelling people, and what was happening is there are new congregations of worshipers forming all over the place again and again and again and again. And so I think that one of the reasons that, throughout the entire age of the New Testament church, more and more churches keep getting planted, is rooted in Scripture's witness of what the early church started doing in response to the gospel. And my final thought is, any church that exists was at one point planted. So I guess that's just like a truism.
Right.
Are you part of a church and you think, oh, but what about renewal? Well, your church wouldn't be there if someone hadn't a thought to plant.
Right.
So I think like there's just a built-in truism about churches that they get planted. And now I think, we have this phrase, it's the ordinary means by which the Spirit renews and expands the church. I think now we could get into all kinds of discussions about how this happens in various communities. I think, I had this conversation with David Snapper, and one of the things he's discovered or seen, and it's not like it's a law, but that churches tend to have a life cycle. They start, they get this vision, they're empowered by that vision, then they at some point or another, peak out, and churches, like if you just study the Christian Reformed Church, congregations go through this. They hit their peak and then they start their decline. And what generally happens is that congregations go through this life cycle, and in some cases, I'm not saying it's inevitable that individual congregations close. I don't believe that at all. I believe that renewal is possible. And anyway, but it just is the case that some churches close. Well, the way that the energy of the church keeps going, the means by which the Holy Spirit renews the church is that, okay, there's I don't know, this isn't fair to say, but there's a church that's sort of become tired. It's aged. It's not attractive to young people anymore. But now, across the street, they planted a new church. And that church has this vital mission that meets its culture better, and on the whole, then what ends up happening is, and now we have to step back from our own engagement in it, because if you're pastoring a dying church, it hurts that you're seeing your church decline, and then here's this guy across the street, and you become jealous because this church planter, is young, doesn't know as much as you do, and everyone's flocking over there, and you're like, jealous. It's natural human jealousy, but if you just step back and look at it, this is great. God's renewing his church.
Yeah.
And this church, okay, nothing's lost. Even as as churches die, this is later on, we'll discuss this. One of the things that we think we need is that, okay, there's going to be some churches and they're going to end their life cycle, but that's not bad because they may do more for the kingdom in dying than they're doing right now.
Right.
Their greatest potential is in dying and helping other churches get started and renewing. Anyway, I love the question. I think it's great. Those are the touch points in my response.
Yeah.
It's not too sharp yet, but it's getting there.
Maybe we'll clip that out and send it to him or something.
Okay.
I'd like to round it out to, that was only 11. There's 12, 13, and 14 points.
Yeah, and 13, by the way, healthy churches pursue renewal.
Yeah.
So that they can multiply.
Yeah. Sunlight is a story of church renewal in itself. So it's not like we're trying to just ignore that fact. No, we want to pursue renewal so that multiplication can happen. Number 5 in the categories, call to urgency and hope. This is perhaps one of the most timely ones. 15. The CRCNA is not fundamentally an institution or a set of agencies. It is a communion of churches bound together in Christ. Could you talk us through that thesis statement?
Yeah. This might be one of the more provocative ones to some.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure when Martin Luther nailed his 95 theses, there were theses that were quite provocative in their day.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of them. And I love people's interaction around this one. I'm going to give you my recounting of the history of our denomination, which, whenever you're recounting history, you have to realize that history is always told through the eyes of the beholder of history. It might not actually be how it happened. Mm-hmm. But this is my general thought, which is the Christian Reformed Church started with a lot of Dutch immigrants. They were fleeing persecution and difficulty in Europe, and they came with hopes of a new day in America. When immigrants come to a new country, they don't speak the language. They tend to congregate together. And I think a lot of our churches, especially in their early days, didn't feel particularly adept at reaching the culture that was here in the new land. They felt particularly adept at, it was about maintaining their culture. It was about having a relief. Mm-hmm. Like, oh man, here are people that actually I'm not struggling to speak. I can just speak open and freely with. And so there was like an identity, a whole thing, okay? When we got to the early 1900s and we got to the world wars, especially the Second World War, so already there might have been a little bit of like an introvert personality that the denomination had. Now, Dutch and German sounded a lot like each other, and people from the Netherlands and people from Germany might kind of look like each other. And so, man, we were at war with the German Nazis, and I think people may have at that time also just decided we got to kind of keep our head down here a little bit.
Okay,
let's not draw attention to ourselves. And
right.
So the idea of like reaching the culture or whatever was also just, so what I'm saying is probably in our early days as a denomination, we developed a little bit of an introversion personality when it came to affecting the culture.
Gotcha.
I think over the course of time, that did begin to shift, especially after World War II. People got out of the little communities. They, were able to travel more. Maybe people coming back from serving in the war had seen a lot of things and had become more cultured. I'm not sure. But I think that there was at least first this kind of introversion. Anyway, because our churches maybe had that character, there was a phrase that we started to develop. There'll be somebody here who knows CRC history way better than I do, and they'll know when this phrase came into our speech. But the phrase was something like this: we can do more together than we can do by ourselves. And the thought was, hey, instead of every local church trying to send out missionaries and plant churches and educate their, future leaders, why don't we, pool our funds together and in a central location gain some expertise about these things, people who would be devoted to sending out missionaries and planting churches and educating people theologically. And so what ended up happening is, at least in our churches, we had a system called quotas. It was later called ministry shares, and there was a certain amount of money that for every member, churches would just send to this central organization. And it just became a common parlance. In fact, if you talk to people around the CRC today, they'll talk about their local church, and then they'll talk about the denomination. And when they talk about the denomination, they're not talking about all the churches that make up the CRC. They are talking about this central office and set of agencies and ministries that we've created. And so when it comes to like foreign missions or home missions or whatever, we just thought, okay, our individual churches can't do anything. And so we're just going to relate to this central entity. Got to turn off the phone. We're going to relate to this central entity. And so it just became common that what we called the denomination was not the collection or communion of churches. It was this third thing that was at the center. And, like a church here in Florida might relate to other churches in Florida, but in general, the relationships we've had beyond the denomination it's like we're connected straight to the center. Yeah. We're not connected to each other. So churches in Washington State don't have any kind of regular communion or fellowship or joint effort with a church in Florida because of distance, but we might both have a connection to the center. And I think we're just at a moment where we have to realize that the wrong definition of denomination has prevailed and, at least for this moment, might be holding us back. Still, our denomination is a gathering, a communion of churches bound together in Christ. And I believe this completely, that everything God does starts with friendship.
Yeah. Do you
think
the
kingdom of God's a kingdom of friends?
Yeah.
And so there needs to be relationships formed. And this is part of what this conference is all about. We're gathering up people to get a joint vision, to discover a passion together, and hopefully get some hope for the future.
Do you think that that phrase, we could do more together than we could do separate, I'm not sure, that turned into they can do more than us?
Probably what ended up happening. I mean, I can sense this. It'll be interesting what other people comment about this. I think back in the day, what ended up happening because of this dynamic is that if you really wanted to have a vital ministry, then your hope was that eventually you might at first, you're a young person, you might have to go out and pastor a church, but hopefully one day you'll be called up to the big leagues and you'll get a denominational position where you can really get going in ministry.
Oh, really?
Okay. Maybe that's an overstatement. Maybe this is why it's a provocative one. But I think, to get a job at the seminary or to have a job at the denomination, that was like, man, if you're somebody, if you have talent, if you have ability, one day you might get called up to the big leagues. Okay. But now I think actually my viewpoint is, there's nothing better than being in local ministry. You don't realize that you're already in the big leagues. Imagine the potential of the local church. And I think the phrase eventually did mean that. We can do more together than we can do alone. Meant like, send your resources to the central thing because that's where it can happen.
Yeah.
And I think I'm wanting to retool that phrase. Man, let us pursue relationships with each other. Let us pursue passions together. Let us relate to each other as churches. There's about 1,000 churches. How do we find a way to build friendships and have relationships? And what can God do with those as we gain passions together, as we share with each other? And so, anyway, that's the thought behind that one.
So there are 5 points in this category called to urgency and hope, and they are all very powerful. However, this one, number 18, is how you opened up the podcast, and I'd like to finish here.
Okay.
We are not in an age of church decline, but in an age of unprecedented gospel opportunity. For whatever reason, this thesis turns everything up on its head, really shifts the paradigm of thinking about, okay, our churches or Christianity in general is not in decline, but actually this is fresh meat for lions. This is
Let's go.
This is like a opportunity waiting to be struck. The iron is hot, the geese are flying or whatever. I'm just making up phrases here now. But this one right here, the age of unprecedented gospel opportunity. Could you talk us through why you see everything this way?
There's a lot I could say here. I don't know if you remember this, but years ago, you and I went to a church planting conference together. And at the conclusion of the conference, there was a kind of like, I don't know, it ended with a consolation kind of, we all gathered together and there was consolation. And there was an acknowledgement that, man, it's tough. Things are hard. People feel beat up. I think all those things are true, by the way. People who are in ministry, it's tough, it's challenging, they can feel beat up. But in this conference, it just took time to kind of like, it ended with, let's really console each other. And nothing wrong with that. But I remember that you went away and you're like, man, that's so weird, because you had been in school, in business and marketing, and you had gone to some sort of mass events, and you're like, the energy's so high. People are like, let's go.
Yeah.
We can walk through fire. We can walk on broken glass. We're going to get cut, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And we both talked about how we just yearned for a church conference that was like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to walk on broken glass. We're going to take the fire, but I don't know. I think those who have the gospel, they have to finally believe that, like, man, I'm with Jesus. Jesus with me.
Right.
There's like nothing that we can't do. And so I suppose this thesis is a way of just reorienting. Look, in North American Christianity, the sky's not falling. Decline is not inevitable. And we may be sensing right now that God is shifting the tide. And though we have been swimming as hard as we can, but going the opposite direction, sort of being swept out to sea, all of a sudden the tide might be going the other way. And now all the strength we gained going through this difficult time is going to propel us in a way like we can't even imagine. And I don't know. There'll probably be time at this conference where people can encourage each other, console each other, really talk about the difficult things that are happening. But in the end, I want us to be like, let's go. God can do it.
Yeah.
We're all set up.
Yeah.
We have everything.
Yeah.
We've got the gospel. We've got the Great Commission. We have this robust articulation of the faith and the Reformed tradition that's just, man, we're all set up. We don't even have to swim anymore. God just gave us a surfboard.
Yeah.
We've got a motorboat. We're
Yeah.
speeding into shore. I don't know. That's my general thought is there is no reason for us to kind of boo-hoo, it's all going to fall apart.
Yeah.
We've been in decline.
There's been enough
we
of
need
that.
To face it.
There's been enough of that. We don't need to do that
Yeah,
anymore.
I think we have to have a sober recognition, like, let's not bare our heads and pretend that everything's not, no, let's face it head on.
Yeah.
But hey, God's going to do it all. So all we got to do is like get on the surfboard, on this motorboat, and just ride it into shore.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going through Joshua right now, and it's just one of those things. The Lord is among us. Like we're marching into this great gospel opportunity, and excited to do it.
And I think, like this little phrase from Joshua 1, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Is that promise only for Joshua, or is it for us too?
Yeah.
And I think it's for us too, because the ground of it is not how strong we are, how courageous we are. The ground of it is Emmanuel.
Yeah.
God will be with us wherever we go. So anyway, let's power up. Let's flex. Let's go. That's my thought.
Yeah. And if you believe that promise is for you and that you are ready to go with us, join us at the Multiply Conference. The links are down in the description. Please register today. Spots are filling up, and we'd love to see you there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Disciple Standard Podcast.
The future is now.